Welcome, welcome, your backup plan tribe, to another awesome podcast brought to you by Talking Taboo with Tina. I am an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Remember, Jeannie? It happens that quickly. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, your life can change. I'm a financial expert and app developer of Your Backup Plan app. I'm located here in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. If you are new here, welcome. I am so happy to have you. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have you and have you watch all of our shows that come up. We have some great guests like today. I'm so excited. We have a special guest, and our story is In the Blink of an Eye, Our Lives Changed. Yeah, isn't that the truth? You know, I talk about this in our show, our podcast all the time. Because we talk about real, raw conversations with our guests and provide, their journey from a life-changing event that happened in their life and how it changed them or their family. Because we can all count on one thing. We can all count that we are going to die sometime. We're going to get sick or disabled or injured, and we just aren't prepared for a disaster or a tragedy to hit our lives because we're just not Superman or Supergirl. We just aren't. Our lives are complicated and really need to be better prepared for the unexpected, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. You don't know what an hour will bring. You don't know what next week will bring. So just like our famous quote from Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan till you get punched in the face. Isn't that true? We do. Anyways, I'd like to welcome all of our listeners from United States and Canada. Absolutely. We love you to bits. I'd like to welcome our German listeners because they're third listener. Then we have Ireland and Italy and India coming up in the ranks. I'm so excited to have all of you. Meine deutsche Freunde in unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke für deine Freundschaft. And thank you so very much for listening, everybody. We love all and each of you. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I get my hand out down here in the corner. Just press that subscribe button, okay? We love you. We love you. So I'd like to get into our show today. I have a very special guest, and she's coming to us from Maryland, United States. And I almost said Maryland, Canada. I don't even think there is a Maryland, Canada. I don't know why that came to my mind, but there's definitely not a Maryland, Canada that I am aware of. So yes, let's bring on Rowena Winkler. Here she is, Rowena. How are you?
Hi, Tina. How are you? I think the Maryland, Canada just means that we need to continue to collaborate and hang out together.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're just on, one side and the other. Hey, we can do that. I'm so excited to have you on, Rowena, because you are a life coach, and I put all your description in the description box below. Rowena's website and everything is on there. She has life coaching programs, and boy, oh boy, does she have a story to tell us today.
Sure.
I don't know.
I think you got everyone ready to go with In the Blink of an Eye. I mean, that's what an interesting and very thought-provoking introduction. And I just have to say that German was amazing. I was so entertained just watching you do the intro. But yeah, I would say that the catalyst moment, as I call it, or this life changing in a blink of an eye moment, is actually what led me to my life coaching business that I started in 2021. And that is my father unexpectedly finding a tumor and being diagnosed with esophageal cancer to the point, to the point where it was incurable. There was a moment where things were looking good, but as I'm sure you no one understand. And as the viewers can attest, right, that doesn't always end up as nice and lovely as expected. And so my dad was young, he was only in his late 60s. And at the time, I was a newly minted PhD student. I found out my dad had cancer when I was on my spring break in my last year of my PhD. And it really changed everything for me. I had spent the majority of my life hustling and grinding, and I got my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in less than 10 years. So working really hard. But the loss of my father caused me at a very young age, right, in my mid 20s, to think deeply about his legacy, my legacy, and the impact that we have on other people, especially our families. So
what do you think brought that into your mind? What do you think did that?
So Tina, my father was in hospice at the house that I grew up in. My mom's a nurse. She's retired now, but at the time she was still a practicing nurse, and so she was home with him. And they had hospice workers coming into my childhood home where he was. And I think my dad sensed that he was getting close to the end, and so he wrote a bunch of quotes and things on paper. I think he was being really reflective and journaling. And after the fact, we found some of these writings, and it just hit me so profoundly to see in his handwriting. And actually, his 10-year death anniversary is coming up in 2023. He passed away in October 2013. And I would like to get one of those, some of his writings as a tattoo, just as a reminder again, because it was so powerful to see. I think it was a surrender. You know what I mean? Like that he had been fighting this disease, but it was at a point where I think he was considering what it was like to leave us. And
It brought up all these emotions,
yes,
and
yes,
life respect, and
yeah, and another related situation or experience that I remember is when he found out that the cancer was at that point, like there was nothing else that the oncologist could do. I was in the hospital with him and my mom, and he just started crying and crying and just saying, "What about my family?" So that moment too really resonated, and I'll never forget it. Him just losing it and just crying. And I think again that was a moment where he's like, "Okay, what about my family?" Right? And this goes along with the work that you do, Tina, that
yeah,
without that backup plan, I think he started to understand the gravity of the situation, and that, what's going to be left for his family to contend with after he's gone.
or what he wants
Yeah.
them to contend with after
Yeah.
he's gone.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice to leave these journals, right? Because it's we do talk about the treasure box in our launching the emerging blueprint that's coming
Mm.
out, where we do actually do workshops on what would you like to leave as a legacy.
Mm.
That was special, that him, by doing that, is because it's in his handwriting too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it must have, like, when you read it, it just must go right to your soul or your heart right away.
Yes, and something else that happened as a result of my father passing away is it it changed my spiritual practice, right? So I was raised Catholic, right? I was born into the Catholicism, went to Catholic school all up until college, and then I left the church. But after my dad passed away, I joined a non-denominational Christian church because I needed community in that moment. I needed support, and it was really powerful to have folks that understood the loss and helped me grieve and helped me process. Now I'm no longer practicing that faith, but I will say that I do have a spiritual practice where I meditate often. I truly believe my dad is, comes to visit and is very present. Like I can feel his presence and his energy. And so, yeah, like you mentioned with the writing, and I have one of his rings that he used to wear that's like a horseshoe. So it's like a lucky horseshoe. So I'm hoping to get that resized soon, because another like artifact to remember him by. Yeah, it's very powerful.
Oh, did you have a T-shirt or anything? I know a lot of times people can get a T-shirt, even though, especially if they've worn it, because it's has their scent on it, and it gives you. I always talk about the five senses.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the writing, which kind of hits your eyes.
Yeah.
And it hits your emotions, but the smell hits a different part of you. So
Yeah, my mother actually over the past several years has given my husband some of what my father had owned, so ball caps and suits, and I'm Filipina American, so even some traditional Filipino clothes that my husband has yet to wear, but so that's been interesting, right? To have
yeah,
see some of my father's belongings. Actually, she most recently gave, and I like it. It's like a oversized like plaid jacket sweater thing that I don't know, it just feels very comfy cozy. And again, I feel my dad's presence. Um
yeah.
yeah, when I wear
Have
it.
Have you seen him or talked to him or anything?
Yeah, so what's interesting, and I know we mentioned this before we started recording, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and this was after almost 2 years of trying to get pregnant, so we had some fertility issues going into it. So we did IVF, so we did in vitro fertilization to have my daughter, and while I was struggling with fertility, my dad came to me a lot. So I saw my dad a lot. I do a lot of acupuncture, so in my acu naps, my dad would come visit, and my grandmother, who is my dad's mom. And at the time, I saw a little boy with him. So I thought, oh, is that like, am I going to have a son? And then I found out that I was having a girl, and I was confused. It wasn't until very recently that I realized that my dad had a son. My dad was married before he married my mom, and he has a son who passed away when he was a little baby. So it's my
Oh,
dad and his son. So I just thought that was very, very interesting. Yeah.
that's very
Mhm.
touching.
Yeah. So
Um,
they're reunited.
isn't that cute?
Mhm.
What about the realization when he first found out? How did that affect your mom? And
Mm.
I,
Yeah.
I think when it gets into that moment too, it's hard for people to even think straight to know, well, what do I need to get prepared? Like you could probably say off the top of your head two or three things, and that's about it. Because you just can't think.
Yeah. Yeah. So my mom is the type of person who springs into action and does all the things to distract herself from really tapping into what is happening. And she's good at it, right? She makes the phone calls, she gets the paperwork done, she follows up with whoever she needs to follow up with. So I think from that standpoint, there were no issues, right? So I feel like my mom did all right considering her husband that passed. Now, mind you, she was very distraught and emotional, and I mean, he passed away in the house that they lived in together with their children. So, I
There's
think
a lot of memories there.
yeah, a lot of memories. And so I think by bringing into action and doing everything needed right away, she I think she was trying to block herself or shield herself from the true emotions that come with your husband dying, right? So,
Yeah, because she took a different role. Why do you think she chose to do that and not put him in an actual hospice?
I I think because she works in the medical field, and I'm not quite sure why she made that decision, but I think it just made sense for her to be home with her versus being at a facility. And
Yeah, well, especially in that field, right?
yeah, and especially since she had been a nurse for 30 plus years at that point, right? So I think she's familiar enough and confident enough that if something were to go south, that I wasn't there. My older sister was at the time, but my mom performed CPR on my father when he collapsed when he went to use the restroom, and she tried to revive him. So, yeah.
Oh, God, that's putting a lot of pressure on somebody.
Yeah.
That even though you might be a nurse or whatever, I mean, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very traumatic.
Sure is. Sure is. And so that's something, I mean, my older sister, who was also there, said that's something she'll never forget. I was living at
Yeah.
Virginia at the time, so I wasn't there. I ended up driving up when I got the call.
I think it would probably be easier if you could just actually just had someone else as the actual one in charge, a stranger,
Mhm.
and then you be on the sideline helping. I think that would have been different than
Yeah.
actually doing it yourself.
Yeah, my mother's an immigrant, so I think the way she operates and the way she was raised is to do it
Do
all
it.
yourself, and she's always been that way, just very resourceful and just
Oh,
do
that's
it yourself.
asking a lot. Oh,
Sure
gee.
is. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
That's crazy. So do you feel like she was able to talk about that, or was your sister be like, because that's a very traumatic time.
Yeah. So my mother is of a generation that doesn't really buy into therapy.
No, mine too.
Yeah, as much as I tried to suggest that, especially after everything that happened, still to this day, no. So, yeah, I've just, I've done the best that I could, and she's quite emotional, So, and I'm the same. I'm very similar to my mother in a lot of ways. And so I don't entirely fault her with how she handled things, because I feel that I'm the same too. I mean, I mentioned I got 3 degrees in less than 10 years, so I
Yeah,
also do a lot, and I'm very active, and I get
go get it
done.
and get
Yeah,
it done. And
get things done and get things done despite what's going on, that the the day that my dad died, I think I took a week off and then went back to teaching, right? So that's just how we operate. But I do go to therapy. So we've evolved a little bit from generation to generation.
and it's always hard to find that perfect therapist also.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like you're a life coach. It's hard to find that one you can connect with.
Yeah.
And have these life events so that people understand when you're helping somebody else.
Mhm.
I think it's really important to be able to tap into those emotions.
I
I think,
agree.
yeah, because you are a kind of a counselor, right? You are a therapist.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always had a propensity for having an open heart and being this inviting space for people to feel comfortable sharing what's going on. I've always had that characteristic or quality with my friends, with family,
Mhm.
with loved ones, right? And I think, the other big thing was the pandemic, right? The pandemic shook things up a bit, where we're again looking around being like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What is my legacy? And on top of that, I had my beautiful baby girl after years of trying. And so it was, again, that it's interesting, right? The death of my father was the first one of the big milestone moments in my life where
Yeah.
I thought very deeply about what we're doing here. And then fast forward to the birth of my daughter, which was the other moment where I said that I wanted to do more to help people. And that's what led to starting my business.
That's awesome. So if we move forward a little bit to how it transpired, what happened after then once you arrived? Like, was everybody organized? Because how long did he have the diagnosis to when he passed? Was it 2 years?
Almost. So let's see. We found out. So yeah, we found out March. We found out March was on spring break, and then the following October was when he passed away. So it was a year and a half maybe? Um,
Yeah.
and I think and again, I would have to speak to her directly. I didn't ask questions about it. I think my mother was making plans behind the scenes, and my mom, she's again, she's like me. She's extroverted. She has a lot of friends and community to lean on, so I think that was helpful too to get resources. I think a couple of friends in her church choir had also lost their husband, so she had support in that way. So I think that was very helpful. But I will say, again, she and looking back on it now, maybe my sister and I could have done more, but she was very, I'm going to take care of it myself. So just watching her run around and trying to get things done. I mean, we came to a couple of meetings and, picking out his casket and things like that. But everything else was
Behind
primarily
the scenes.
primarily handled by my mother. Mm-hmm.
Do you think your dad had that organized before he went?
I doubt it. If not on his own accord, I feel like if things are organized, it's because my mom organized it. She was the organizer
Yeah.
of the family. My father, not so much.
He worried about the other stuff, whatever that was.
He was the I don't know how to say this. I would say he was the fun one, right? So he was the, if we're gonna talk of dualities in
Well,
that way.
people personalities are always different.
Yeah, he was very charismatic, so he worked really hard, and then he provided for the family in that way. But in terms of all the logistics and the organizational pieces, that was my mom's bread and butter.
Well, and that is the majority of people out there for our
Mhm.
listeners. It's the men go and do the protection part, and the women worry about their nest
Right.
and looking after their nest, their children or their finances or the bills to pay or whatever that
Yeah.
looks like. So that was helpful for her to already have been doing that to start
Mhm.
with. So,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of wives out there that have lost their husbands and have no clue how to pay a bill or how they even did it or where anything is. It's very shocking, actually.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, we were lucky in that regard that the one that was still alive handled all of that. So it wasn't a
Yeah, that's really good. So,
was
did you have any trouble after with paperwork and finding things that you weren't aware that you needed to do?
No, my mom is quite organized. She had a lockbox at the bank, and she also has some, like, a safe at the house. So I'm fairly certain that she had things ready to go, and I think it was just a matter of what things she needed. But she's good like that. I think she had a lot of what she needed. I I honestly believe that the part that was more difficult for her was handling the emotional side of things, and and leaning on my older sister and I for support, right? So
Yeah.
that was harder for her.
Well, it's a change of your life when
Mhm.
you lost someone.
Mhm.
Um, People say, when you lose your dog um, or a pet, when you come home, it's the worst moment is to find your animal not there greeting you so happily,
Yeah.
when you come home. So, or when you go to bed and they're not beside you.
Yeah.
So I think I hate to use that as an example, but it's that same kind of feeling. It's the
Mhm.
loss of something.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes you don't even know what it is. It's a feeling. It's they're not there anymore. And so you have this void.
Yeah.
And it's very strange to, process your feelings. And it makes it very hard to make these final decisions as well.
Yeah.
Either because you don't know what he wanted, but at least he was given a year and a half to talk about these types of things.
Mhm.
I'm sure they probably had a few conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not quite sure what those entailed, but I think that I think he would have been happy with how we handled everything.
I think, well, she probably had a few conversations, but it's unfortunate that you guys weren't
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah, and looking back on it now, my mother's also like me. Again, we're very similar. We're very anxious people, and at the time, as I mentioned, I was finishing my doctorate. I was in the middle of writing my dissertation when my father was sick, and I dedicated my dissertation to him with the hopes that he would survive. But by the time I had graduated, he was not doing well, and I I think I think the intentions were to not have me get upset or distraught, but there were several instances where I wasn't getting updates, and my sister had to update me because my mom was afraid that I would, not finish, or you know what I mean, and just not be able to focus on school. So,
Which
again,
is true, kind
yeah,
of.
it's true, but I don't know, in a way I wish that I had known what was going on more in the moment instead of hearing it second or third hand,
After.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
who knows what's right at
That's
the
true.
moment?
That is true. We all do the best we can, right? In the moment to moment of, especially with something like a loved one dying. It's there's a lot
Yeah.
going on. Mhm.
Well, now that you have a 2-year-old, how do you think this makes you feel after looking at what's happened with your dad and what can happen, and what what has it changed your life with your partner and your child?
Yeah, it really made me think very deeply about not taking advantage of anyone or anything in my life to have this perspective and mindset of gratitude for everything that I have, and to know that you just never know if someone's going to get sick, if someone is going, I had a friend who's very young. I think he was in his late 20s that was killed from a motorcycle accident. You just never know. It's not just age, right? And so
No, it's
really,
not color, it's not
yeah,
language,
yeah,
it's
we never
has
know.
no has no the universe has no decision.
Yeah, yeah. And so it just staying present and enjoying what I have, and my little one is, definitely on the top of the list with that. To this day, she'll smirk or have a little, like, a very mischievous face, and I see my dad, like, through and through in that smile and that smirk, because, again, as I mentioned, he was very charismatic and very funny. He was a very funny
Yeah,
guy. So when my little one acts silly, like, I feel like that's my dad hanging
absolutely.
out with us too. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, did you don't realize that all the paperwork or questions that you get asked. Did you go to the funeral home and do any of that?
We did. My sister and I did a little bit, as I mentioned. So some of the decisions, right? But it was more, actually, my mom invited us when it was more about the programming, right? Like the event itself. What's the prayer card going to be? It was the aesthetics of it. What's the prayer card going to be? What poem are we gonna, right? I
What music are you gonna
what
play?
music, right? I sang Ave Maria at my father's funeral mass, and what
Wow.
readings.
How did you manage that?
Oh boy, I don't know, but I got through it. Yeah, it was hard, but I managed to, my dad was a singer as well. So my dad and I sang a lot together. That was something that was really fun and important to us as a family. So I
I
felt that.
know, but just think of all the emotions in that moment. I think it's because it's the air of everybody, the energy that's in their room.
Mhm.
It makes it even harder, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I remember the practice run was okay, and then, of course, in the moment with everyone there, but I managed to get through it. But again, that's what I was saying, right? That those were the decisions that we did, the 3 of us, my mom, my sister, and I. We didn't again, and I see that in myself too. And it's something that I'm actively working hard. It's very hard for me to ask for help with those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I'm very self-sufficient. I was raised this way, but yeah,
Very
knowing
independent.
yeah. But I think it's important to involve your family. And to your point about spouses, my husband is the one that handles the finances, and he's that person in our family. And I'm looking to become more involved, right? So that in the event, like, God forbid, something would happen, that I wouldn't be left in the dark. It really makes you think more deeply about, okay, should something happen, what's next? How are we going to handle this, especially with our little one?
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
I think it's all fine and dandy for one person to do the financing part. Um, and and I think the other person really appreciates that in a nice relationship. Um, but I think there's a problem because the other person shouldn't have to know every specific detail. Like
Mhm.
it probably doesn't matter, like how much money is in the account this month. Like if you're in a trusting relationship, I don't think that part matters. But I think what does matter is that you know how to do it
Mhm.
if you needed to. Like if he was in ICU tomorrow from a car accident for 3 months and you have to go sit by his side and help him with your emotions of because holding his hand and by you being fearful and worried, it's not going to help his recovery at
Mhm.
all.
Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
have to give all your good loving energy to the
Yeah.
situation and to him. And so, but how do you dissect that? When you go home, you're up in this worrisome part of not knowing how to do anything or where
Mhm.
anything is, to trying to figure things out, to going over there and trying to turn yourself around to positive energy.
Yeah.
And you can't. So it's nicer to have some sort of system that you know what to do if you had to.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that's my point, really.
Yeah, and it's a really great point to have, Tina. I will say, as you were speaking, I will say that I am the keeper of the documents. That's my job. That's
It's like
my
the
role.
garbage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have all those. You know, I'm that's the skill set I have, right? I can keep track of things and have everything, filed and whatnot. But he's
And that's
definitely
important too.
right. So I think, to your point, right, that we're all on the same team, and we're all just trying to keep track of everything, but having that trust and open communication has been important for us.
Yeah, especially on how to pay the bills, because I mean, over time it's changed, right? You used to go
Mhm.
into the bank and pay the bill, and then it went to telephone banking, and then it went to internet online banking. So it's
Mhm.
it's it's continually changed.
Mhm.
You used to get the invoice or your bill in the mail, and now you get it digitally, or you
Right.
don't at all, and you have to go into an app to get it.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of digital assets. So how do we know what your husband has to what you might have in your wallet? There's reward points, there's aeroplan points, there's reward points for grocery stores and Visa credit cards and all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, yeah, so it'd be helpful if you could somehow, if you don't know what it is or what you have, to at least know where to go to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For
So,
sure.
yeah. Um, if I asked you what you would like to do, and this is for small business owners because you have a small business,
Sure
have
do.
you had that conversation with your partner, your spouse, to what you want done with your business portion? Do you want it to continue or?
No, I have not, but that is a conversation we probably should have. I'm a baby entrepreneur. I I started my LLC in 2020 and it was primarily just astrology. So I was just doing astrology readings, but I pivoted to the coaching bit in 2021 as I previously mentioned. But it's a very, very good point. I'm still in the building phases and having wonderful clients and working toward that and refining my goals and my vision for how I want to help people. But I have not thought too far beyond that. And I think I maybe that's something to put on the to-do list for sure.
Yeah, because we forget it. It's a part of it. It's your life.
Yeah.
And whether there's revenue coming from it, some, small businesses might have regular revenue coming, or if you got sick, for 2 months or injured, is there someone to step in and fill in or, all of those kinds of questions.
Yeah, I had a little microcosm of that back when I got COVID last month in June. I couldn't work. And
Yeah.
it really made me think about, oh goodness, how is this going to work? You know, when I can't work. So I think that's a really important consideration for sure.
Yeah. And COVID brought a lot of those kind of questions to everybody.
Sure did.
A lot of people ended up in ICU and recovered, but it brought light to a lot of moments, I think,
Mhm. Mhm.
to what if.
Mhm.
Scary moments, actually, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the war has changed things in the world. I think and of course, the climate change has a huge effect of how it's affecting our lives, both home and business. But what do you think you would have for your listeners for your final message? What would you like your listeners to know? Because I think they already love you for your life coaching abilities.
Yeah, I would say that as best as possible to stay present and to really express gratitude on the regular in that presence and not just for the people we surround ourselves with, but for things like the sunshine and the fact that I can walk on my 2 feet today. We think about gratitude and, it doesn't have to we don't have to wait for a life altering in a blink of an eye situation to wake up and realize how much beauty and life is around us, right? We should work on those moments day by day, and it could be the smallest thing, right? It's
Yeah.
my 2-year-old laugh is the best thing in the entire world.
Or when you see kittens play or something like that,
Yeah,
it's
things like that just make you smile. And I would also say related to that, don't rush to to get your phone out right away. Be in the lived experience. I think in the world of social media, we're like, oh, let me get it on TikTok or whatever, which is fine. Trust me, I love social media, but there's some moments that might just be nice to experience it just for you.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's really important, especially when the person's passing.
Yes, for
Um,
sure.
and I don't think we are present. I don't think the majority of people are.
No, and as you mentioned, we're going through a lot as a collective. There's a lot happening right now, and by being present and staying grounded in all of it, I think the better that it's going to be for us, because with everything happening, it's easy for us to feel overwhelmed and anxious and, gloom and doom. But by staying present and, again, witnessing and enjoying and loving all the wonder and awe and amazement that's around us, I think that's going to help us move forward.
I think so. It's creating love,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
have to create love. What kind of situations, because I did forget to ask you this question, when the time came with your dad, I understand you had some family issues with the extended family portion.
Yeah, so my dad comes from he's one of 6. So he has a lot of siblings. I have a lot of cousins. I have a lot of relatives on that side of the family. And there were a couple of things, right? So there's a plot of land that my parents purchased in the Philippines that they were hoping to retire to someday together. Obviously, with him passing, that was no longer the case. And just things like that were in the family. And so after he had passed away, there were some conversations about where that was going to go. And, and even when he was sick, there were a couple of times where our relatives, the extended family, needed help. And so I don't think this is unique to family dynamics. I don't think it's unique to immigrant family dynamics to help out
Yeah.
relatives, but I think it made it a bit tricky when he was so sick and then after he passed, right? Because then, you have to contend with more players in terms of the belongings and how to divvy things up.
But why do we have to argue over? We talked about this before backstage. Why do we have to argue about that teacup and saucer?
I think it goes back to, again, what we were talking about before we started recording. I think there's a deeper underlying root to all of this, right? That death forces us to look at our own mortality, and then it forces us to look at our own wounding, and whether that's not enough.
Brings the stuff up.
Yeah, it brings stuff up. It brings a lot of this inner stuff up to the surface, and it can show up, as our best selves. Like, I've witnessed other families, right, that it brings families together, but it also can drive families apart because, yeah, things are coming up, and depending on how you're able to handle that as a family unit can go either way,
Especially, I think communication is really super important.
Yeah.
And when you don't have those previous family conversations, whether it's with the extended family or just the immediate family, I always say with the immediate family to have those strong wishes and those big, hard, taboo questions that you have to ask each other. But the extended family, if you're not, it just makes sense because the immediate family is the inner circle. And the
Right.
extended family is the outer circle. And if
Mhm.
you don't have this figured out, this inner part, it's going to snowball to the exterior.
Yeah, for sure. I think that coming together as a united front, as as the immediate family unit is going to be it's going to be a much more positive experience, right? Because if you
Yeah.
all are on the same page, when external or extended family members
Yeah.
come out, maybe from the woodwork,
From
right?
the woodwork, usually.
That too, right? Right? Maybe they come out of the woodwork. You're all on the same page as a collective united front family unit. And I know that's something that my husband and I are very committed to, right? I have a PhD in communication, so obviously I understand the value of communication, but fortunately my husband is open and communicative as well. So whether that's finances or wills, right? Wills and testaments and especially with our
Which,
kiddo, yeah. I think these are conversations that we want to have so that we're on the same page moving forward.
yeah, especially for after the fact. It's
Mhm.
one thing when the person's sick, but after the fact, boy, oh boy, I don't know where some people think that they deserve, or, whatever that is. I'm not sure, but it causes so much heartache for the whole unit.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we just try to put off, well, I don't want to deal with that stuff. It's yucky. I don't want to have to talk to Uncle John, and I
Yeah.
don't want to talk to Mary, because, it's just difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy having these conversations, but it's discomfort in the short term that's going to pay off so much more in the long term. Any of these kinds of conversations that are really scary and could be anxiety provoking, but need to happen, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's two worries. It's the worries of the unit of, I don't want to have difficulties, or in your communication, you don't want these feelings to be created, bad and good, but you also don't want to have it blow up
mhm.
either.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you don't want to even talk about it to start with.
Mhm.
I mean, how many people say, let's set a date? Oh, I'm so excited for October 3rd, and we'll have our family conversation, and we'll take out our appies and our glass of wine and our coffee, and, we'll do these worksheets that Tina has for us. Woo! It's
Yeah.
not something that it's not Thanksgiving, but it's so important.
Yeah.
So, so very important. It's it's right up there with birthdays and Christmas and Thanksgiving, and have you considered what you'd like to do for your legacy, for treasure box items that we talk about in our show?
So I mentioned that I sang at my dad's funeral service, so I'm a performer, so I would imagine something to that effect, whether that's a recording of me singing or a video. My husband and I met ballroom dancing.
Oh, nice.
We're a very artistic family. So I think that would be really lovely to have things of that nature
To
as
put
well.
away.
Yeah, and I'm a writer as well, so very creative. I'm a Pisces, so I'm very creative, and I've written a lot of poetry and things like that. So I think that would be fun. And yeah, I'm a nerd. I like board games and things. So I don't know, something that folks would be like, "Oh man, Rowena," that would really,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
That would be fun. I love board games too. It's way more fun than on the computer or sitting on your tablet.
Yeah, unfortunately, COVID, it was hard to do that, but hopefully we can get back to the spirit of game nights again in person.
Yeah, yeah, that would be fun.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rowena Winkler, with us today. I am so, you know, um, your story is very, not overwhelming, but I think it shows how things can go awry,
Mhm.
and how we can make it better.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for coming on the show and helping our listeners to understand the complications to what can happen and what did happen. And, I really, really appreciate that. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Tina. This is a really important topic that a lot of us, as we've mentioned, don't like to talk about or feel that they can't really talk about until the situation is right in front of our face, which
Yeah,
probably isn't the best time to process and contend with all of this. So I hope that my story and my sharing has helped your listeners understand the dynamics and the complexities that go into it, but that it can also bring some beautiful silver linings, as for me with how I see the world and my
yeah,
relationships and my business.
absolutely. Especially your business. I think it's really transformed you from the inside out. And I think
Yes.
that's what it can do. So
Mhm.
thank you. And I do want to remind everybody that Rowena's information is down below in the description box. So make sure you click on her and check out her website and her programs that she has available for everybody. She's an awesome, awesome, very touching Pisces person that can help you She has feelings, of course, and a lot of energy that could help guide you through to the next step, whether maybe you're going through grief. I mean, it's probably the hardest thing, going through grief and trying to build a business. Man, that's
Yeah.
a tough one.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times women are given the ex-husband's business, after he's passed. They have all that stuff to deal with on top of the personal. So that brings up a whole other can of worms there, because now you have a business that you know nothing about. So, and there was no plans for anything else, so that makes it tough, and people should really think about what if. What if? And I think it brings out Katy Perry's song, If I Had 5 Minutes, or if I had, I can't remember the song now. If I had one day left in my life, what would I say, or what would I do? So that's very profound, I think.
Sure is. I don't know if I'm familiar with that song. I'll have to find it.
I'll have to link it down below for everybody.
Yes, me too.
So thank you, guys. So thank you so very much for Rowena to come on our show. It was absolutely wonderful. If you haven't liked, shared, and subscribed to our channel, click down in that box down below. I get my yellow hand out there. And if you are thinking about that special someone right now, watching the show that you haven't talked to in a while, you haven't said hi to, and you really love and care about them, please reach out, call them today, knock on their door, Zoom them, FaceTime them, whatever it takes, but reach out and tell them how much you love and care about them today, because you don't know what tomorrow might bring. So stay tuned for our podcasts and our live streams. Interesting. We have such interesting and accomplished people in the world today that we have come on and entertain you, inform you, motivate you, inspire you. And I'm so very excited to be going into our 3rd season with our show. So thank you so very much, because it's all up to you guys, listeners, to appreciating what I'm bringing you on these platforms. No one is Superman. Nobody's Supergirl in this world, so expect the unexpected. We were all on all podcast platforms: YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. We have a VIP Facebook group, which brings a lot of people, just like Dr. Rowena here, that could be a part of the community on the Facebook group and talk about, I had this challenge, or this is what I did, and I don't know how to do this, and this is what was brought up. So please check that out in the description box as well. Thank you for sharing and coming on our show, and thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. So thank you very much. And I always end our show, and I know that you know who Carol Burnett is. I always end our show with Carol Burnett. I'm so glad we had this time together. You could probably sing this better than me. Just to have a laugh or sing a song, seems we just get started. And before you know it, comes a time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. It was great to have you. Stay safe, be kind, and expect the unexpected. Thank you. Bye-bye.